Okay, g'day, here we go. First lesson, number 1. Let's have a crack at this. Number 12 brush, bristle brush. We're going to slap a little bit of colour on and get this sky happening. So there's a bit of burnt sienna, oil paints. I'm just going to do that nice and free. Get a bit of colour on the board. So the burnt sienna, and then we've put a little bit of alizarin crimson, get some nice reds up into the sky. So just wipe it back nice and gentle. It's all about pressure, because if we put too much pressure on, we're going to take too much off, so it's just nice and light. There we go. Pretty as. Right. Now, the burnt sienna mixed with a little bit of Prussian blue to get a dark, yucky, horrible colour happening here for some background trees. Just nice and loose. So there's just a little line of trees in the background. A little bit of a shape happening there. So this has got a glossy undercoat, so that's why I'm able to wipe it all back off. Because of the glossy finish, it's nice and slippery. That looks okay. Nice balance, away we go. And this just cleans off with terps. Give that a quick wash, get that colour off there. This is a bit of Indian yellow for the background, just give it a nice warm feel to it. Just thinning it down with a bit of terps, just mineral terps for oils. That glides on nice. A bit more burnt sienna. A little bit more red. A bit of that crimson. And then we go back a bit more dirty colour. So we've only got 4 colours here so far. The foreground's always nice and dark, and it gets lighter as we go back. It gives you that depth of field. Looks nice. And take that back again. Remembering slight pressure, just really light. There we go. Oops. Bring in a little bit of white for foliage. Some titanium white mixed with the Indian yellow and a touch of the blue for our foliage. So we get a little bit of the Prussian blue, mix it up with titanium white and Indian yellow. So we've still got limited colours, pretty basic. And then once again with the pressure of the brush, it's very important, because if we push too hard it's going to make a big blob and we don't want that, so it's going to be really nice and light pressure on the brush. So just little touches of colour for the foliage. And presto. So we're just putting little bits of green highlights and leaving a lot of that dark, horrible colour underneath to shine through. It gives you a lot of depth that way. We'll come along and put some sticks and trunks in the trees later on. They'll look fantastic. There we go. A bit more blue. Some saltbush look. Bob's your uncle. So you can vary your colours with just different strengths of blue or yellow or whatever you like. So remember, I can whack that back on there. Okie dokie. We'll get some trunks happening. More colour. So all the darks are just burnt sienna and Prussian blue to make a nice dark colour for the trees, for the trunks. And then we can highlight them later once we get all the darks in first. So get some nice shapes happening here. Where am I going? Okay, and then I use my marl stick because I get too shaky without it, with the finer details. Just blend them into the ground. My light source is coming from the right hand side. That's why I've put the foliage, a little bits of green on the right hand side of all these trees, just to give them a little bit of shape. There we go. It needs another one. So it's all about balance and composition, so you just quite often spend a bit of time sitting back and looking and just thinking about things before we actually execute it. So I think that just needs another nice run there. And then the tricky bits, which makes everything much easier. So flip the jolly thing upside down, which is a good trick, just to put all these little bits in. And quite a few artists like to tip their works upside down at some stage or another. And we get this nice and thinned out with the terps. So we've got a real runny little mix there, so it holds its line. I always give it a little twirl to make it nice and fine on the edge of that. And then we start whacking all these little bits in. It's much easier for me to do it upside down like this. Just flows off the brush a little bit better. So dead trees got sticks going all sorts of directions, so we just have a little play with the shapes. I need this stick for balance. And so if the paint isn't thinned out with the terps enough, we're never going to get these beautiful fine lines. So you don't want it too runny with too much terps, you want just a nice little consistency. And that's why we always mix on the palette and get it right on the palette first. No bad mistakes. Or big blobs and paint monsters, because sometimes you can just put a big blob on and then you're stuck with it. It's hard to fix. Okay, so that's starting to take a bit of shape. Okay, and then we've got this. It's just a bit of cardboard paper, really. It's just sharpened up. It's just a roll of paper. You can get them from most of your art supplies. Put some twigs in back here. Bit of fallen timber. With all those darks that we've left in behind the green, gives you that nice little bit of depth. Just scratching the way through. So this is a really quick little style just to get it straight down, wet on wet, and you have this finished very, very quickly. Whereas sometimes with oils you've got to do a certain amount and then let it dry for a day and come back to it and have several different applications. It depends what style you're using. That's starting to look nice. And then just with the terps, I'll get it nice and wet. Nice wet brush so it's nice and clean. I'm going to take some of this paint off for highlights. And start giving the tree a bit of shape. And that gives you form with your little shadows and highlights. It starts coming to life. Beautiful. So we're just removing the dark paint here. It looks pretty good. That doesn't though. So once again, our light source is coming from the right-hand side because it's not an actual scene. I've just made this up. So all the light's coming from the right, so our shadows are going to go off to the left. Highlights are all going to go onto the right-hand side of the trees. And then we can come back along with this thing, and just for the finer bits, we could just whack a little bit more detail in with them. Just some dried up old bits of sticks hanging off. So you need a lot of terps on this to get rid of that paint, and just keep wiping it off onto a tissue. So once we've got the basic composition down like this, I can put virtually anything into it. A couple of chooks or a kangaroo or a bloke chasing a dog or whatever you want in it. So we can add all that in after. So there's a bit of a fiddly bit. This is probably the longest part of the painting, but it's effective and it looks really good when the brush works. So once again, we've got burnt sienna, Prussian blue, a bit of alizarin crimson, titanium white, and Indian yellow, which is really good. That yellow there looks really nice. It sets it all back. Darken up your foreground, as I said. It gives you a bit of depth. And while you're painting, it's very important not to have your tongue hanging out, which I do sometimes. I remember my nan used to laugh at me when I was doing drawing with her. She said, "You always got your tongue hanging out." The look of concentration. There we go. It's starting to look pretty good. Whammo. Now, if I want, actually, I've got a good idea. We can whack a couple of buildings in the background. So I'm going to do the same thing with just an empty brush, a bit wet, and just going to wipe a bit of that rubbish out of the way. So this is nice and free. There's no real detail, so to speak. It looks detailed, but as you can see, it's a bit rough. But that's what it's all about, just impressions. A little bit of a roof on this thing happening. And we come back with the darks. A bit of shadow because our light source is from the right hand side, as we said. So you can come back and put more detail in here and there. You do what you want. Just keep building on it. There's no real limit to what you can put in here. Fill it up with people or chooks and dogs and cattle or whatever you like. An old car wreck or something, whatever. It's good to have an idea of what you're doing before you start, unlike me at the moment. I've got no idea what I'm doing here, but it's starting to look good. bits of rubbish laying around. So I get used to this mahl stick because it just keeps my hand steady, because I'm an old fella now. I'm not as steady as I used to be. So, and once again with those, we just whack a bit of a highlight in as well, just to give it a little bit of form. A couple of old fence posts. And the oil paints I'm using are, they've got an alkyd resin in them, so they dry really quick. So this will be virtually dry tomorrow, whereas a lot of normal slow drying oils, you take days and days to dry, which is not so good, but this is the way to go. A bit of a chimney or something there. Got no idea what that is, but anyway. Let's extend that. So by not putting too much effort into the detail, it's good. It's got a nice, just a nice loose feel to it. So we don't have to worry about making everything detailed and beautiful. It's nice to have a little bit of a organised chaos. Actually, what do I need to do here? I'll whack a bloke in here doing something. Skinny legs. A little bit of shadow. Nice white shirt straight out of the wash. So along the same style of the houses, it's just nice and quick and free. We're not worrying about too much detail. Just little impressions of things. So he looks all right. Probably should have a dog with him. And because it's wet on wet, if I made a mistake with his dog, for example, it's a bit hard to rub him out, so you'd have to put a bush over him or something like that, but it doesn't matter, because you're not painting an exact subject, it's just something you've made up, and look at that, it's starting to come up all right. A wire sticking up there. Let's use the back of the brush for that highlight. No, it won't. It's not working. We're just about done, so that didn't take long. Bit of colour, bit of action. Looks pretty good, I reckon. And that's oils. We'll play around with some acrylic in a couple of the other lessons, which is totally different again. But nice and free, nice and flowy, not too much mucking around. There you go, look at that. G'day, success. Bit of Coro. That looks alright, so I'll put some on him too. Couple little birdies. I'll put a couple up there sitting in the tree too. I've made a mess there. And this is usually when you sit back, have a look and think, oh, what else can I whack in there? Just to bring the interest into it. So there you have it. Quick and easy. What do you reckon?